They came for love. They left in silence. On a quiet May morning in 2017, inside a villa designed for honeymoon bliss, a bride was found lifeless, her body half submerged in a marble tub, her hands marked by struggle, her throat marked by silk. Have you ever shared a room with someone you love, trusting them so completely that doubt never even crossed your mind? Have you ever believed you were safe simply because you were in love? Amal and Ruben Voss did. They were young, devoted, and freshly married. Their trip to Zanzibar was meant to celebrate the start of a forever kind of life. Instead, it marked the end of everything. In a resort known for privacy and elegance, where couples sipped wine under swaying palms and walked barefoot on warm sand, one woman's final moments were marked by silence, bruises, and a scarf tied too tightly. No forced entry, no eyewitnesses, no clear answers. Her husband was found sitting at the edge of the bed, covered in blood, staring at nothing. He said he didn't do it. Authorities said he did. The resort said as little as possible. So, what happened that night in Villa 7? Was this the tragic result of a private argument gone too far? Or did someone slip through the palms and vanish before dawn? Was Ruben a grieving widower, or the only witness left alive because he made sure of it? Before we get into the full story, let me ask you this. Would you ever travel abroad with someone you had doubts about? Have you ever been in a relationship where love felt safer than the truth? Drop your thoughts in the comments, hit like if this story already has you hooked, and make sure you subscribe, because what you're about to hear might change how you see trust, travel, and tragedy forever. Before their names made headlines, Amal Bukhari and Ruben Voss were just two young people who believed deeply in the kind of love that doesn't need to be loud to be lasting. Amal was the kind of woman who read poetry at bus stops. A literature student at the University of Manchester, she was known for quoting Virginia Woolf during debates and scribbling verses in the margins of her textbooks. Born to Pakistani immigrants, Amal was both fiercely rooted in her culture and openly curious about the world beyond it. She had an expressive face, a mind sharp as flint, and a laugh that was all light. Ruben, on the other hand, lived more quietly. A history major with a love for forgotten war letters and vintage cameras, he often let others fill the room with words while he took everything in. He grew up in a modest home in Linton Bridge, a sleepy coastal town in northern England where he later returned to teach high school. His students described him as gentle, thoughtful, and a little too obsessed with shipwrecks. Their paths crossed on a rainy afternoon in a second-floor lecture hall. Amal spilled her coffee on Ruben's notebook, apologized 3 times, and sat beside him for the rest of the semester. Somewhere between group projects and late-night study sessions, admiration turned into something unspoken, then undeniable. Their love was the slow-burning kind. No public declarations, no grand performances. Just 5 years of shared bookshops, quiet road trips, and handwritten notes on Post-its. Ruben loved that Amal cried during documentaries and made up bedtime stories for their nieces. Amal loved how Ruben never interrupted people mid-sentence and remembered the names of everyone's pets. They were different in pace, but aligned in values. Every decision, every plan was rooted in mutual care. By the time they got married in early 2017, no one doubted they were each other's person. Their wedding was held in Amal's childhood garden, filled with string lights and close friends. Ruben wore his grandfather's watch. Amal read a poem she had written when they first started dating. Their honeymoon in Zanzibar was meant to be a celebration of everything they had built. Years of kindness, patience, and shared dreams. It was the trip they'd talked about during exams, over cheap wine, and during quiet Sundays wrapped in blankets. They had no idea their story would be cut short in the very place they had imagined would bring them closer than ever. They touched down just before sundown, 2 people wrapped in new vows, walking hand in hand through the soft humidity of Zanzibar's coast. It was the kind of arrival that makes you believe happiness can be booked in advance. The Mangrove Reef Resort, nestled along the eastern shore, was a place designed for intimacy. Its villas were spaced far enough apart to feel like private worlds. Thatched rooftops peaked between swaying trees. The ocean was so close, the sound of the tide folded into every breath. Villa 7 was theirs. A standalone suite, partially hidden by flowering hedges and framed by a stone path that led straight to the beach. The windows opened wide to let the sea in. The bathtub, Amal would later post, was a daydream built from marble. Her Instagram told the story of those first few days better than any eyewitness could. Amal writes day 2, coconut pancakes, a view I don't deserve. Ruben's already found the perfect shell. Life is soft here. Caption under a photo of their breakfast tray, sunlight bleeding through linen curtains. Some all-light writes, Day 4, snorkeling, 10/10. Ruben screamed into his snorkel when he saw a jellyfish. I married a brave man. Captioned under a blurry underwater selfie, her eyes squinting behind fogged goggles. They walked the beach at dusk, dined by lantern glow, and slept with the windows open. Staff recalled them as gracious, always smiling. Local vendors near the market remembered Amal's enthusiasm for hand-painted scarves, and how Ruben would quietly bargain just to see her laugh. But not everyone was charmed. A cafe owner nearby described them as friendly, but a little distant. A villa neighbor noted they kept mostly to themselves, rarely joining in the social mixers organized by the resort. One guest remembered catching a glance between them during dinner that felt off, brief, unreadable, but enough to notice. Still, no one gave it much thought. Why would they? After all, love looks different on everyone. May 17th began like the days before it, slow, golden, and full of quiet affection. Ruben and Amal had returned from a reef boat tour that morning, spent the afternoon in a shaded hammock near their villa, and skipped the group bonfire for a private dinner on their terrace. Around 9:40 p.m., Ruben appeared at the resort's open-air bar. The security camera above the liquor shelf caught a clear view of him, sand still clinging to the cuffs of his trousers, sunburn blooming across his forehead. He asked for 2 cocktails. Passion fruit rum, stirred, not shaken. Can you bring them to Villa 7? He added, glancing back over his shoulder. Of course, sir, the bartender replied. Those were the last words Ruben said to anyone that night. What happened between then and morning would never be fully understood. At 8:15 a.m., a housekeeping supervisor knocked on the door of Villa 7. The Do Not Disturb tag still hung on the handle. Odd, but not unheard of. When repeated knocks brought no response and the couple failed to show up for their dolphin watching trip, the resort manager used a master key. The scent of salt lingered in the air, mixed with something unfamiliar. The curtains were still drawn. A chair was tipped over near the patio door. One of Amal's sandals lay near the entryway, the other nowhere in sight. Ruben was sitting on the edge of the bed, motionless. His hands were stained red to the wrists. His expression was vacant, as though some part of him had left long before anyone entered that room. Staff said he didn't speak. When asked if he was okay, he looked at them with distant eyes and said softly, "She's not breathing." They found Amal in the bathtub. Her body was partially submerged in cold water, her dark hair fanned out over the edge. A white silk scarf had been tightly wound around her neck. Her wrists bore faint bruises. The bathroom floor was slick, shards of a shattered perfume bottle near the vanity. One towel was crumpled in the sink, the other pressed into the corner like it had been grabbed mid-fall. The silence in that room was unbearable. Security arrived within minutes. So did local law enforcement. As Ruben was led away in handcuffs, one of the resort's junior staff whispered to another, he didn't even ask if she was alive. Hours later, as news quietly reached other guests, a chill settled over the resort, not from the weather, but from a truth no one could escape. Have you ever felt like you were being watched, even in paradise? Let us know in the comments if you've ever ignored your instincts while traveling, or sensed that something wasn't quite right. And don't forget to subscribe if you're drawn to stories where paradise takes a wrong turn. The initial hours of the investigation were marked by disorder, an eerie disarray that mirrored the scene inside Villa 7. By mid-morning, the resort had been cordoned off at the eastern wing. Police combed through the villa, questioned staff, and reviewed CCTV footage. That's when the first major concerns surfaced. 2 of the resort's security cameras, one near the bar, the other monitoring the rear path behind the villas, had gone dark just after 10 p.m. According to the hotel's IT technician, the footage from those 2 feeds was corrupted. Whether by accident or intent, no one could say. Ruben's account only added to the confusion. He told investigators he'd left the villa around 10:45 p.m. to walk along the shoreline alone. He claimed Amal had already gone to bed. When he returned, by his own estimate, sometime after 11:30, he said he found her in the bathtub, unmoving. He didn't call for help. He didn't alert reception. He said he sat down beside the bed, frozen, unable to think clearly. When asked why he hadn't shouted for someone or attempted CPR, his voice reportedly cracked. It was too late, he said. She was already gone. To authorities, the timing didn't line up. A guest in the neighboring villa later mentioned hearing a scream around midnight. Not a shout, something sharp, abrupt, and cut short. He didn't report it at the time. Couples argue, he told police. I didn't want to get involved. Forensics added more weight to the growing uncertainty. The white scarf used in the attack bore Amal's foundation and lipstick, but no clear grip marks. A broken perfume bottle was found near the vanity, its edge stained red. There were small cuts on Amal's hand, consistent with defensive wounds. Most notably, DNA from an unidentified male was discovered under 2 of her fingernails. Police lifted additional fingerprints from the sliding door that led to the private outdoor shower. Some prints matched hotel staff, housekeeping, room service, maintenance. Others didn't match anyone in the resort's employee database. What made things worse was the absence of any sign of forced entry. The lock had not been tampered with. Nothing had been stolen. Ruben's clothing tested positive for Amal's blood. So did his skin. But as his defense team pointed out later, that alone didn't prove guilt, only proximity. They argued that any husband attempting to revive his wife might bear the same marks. Back in England, the media was already building a storm. Tabloids labeled it a honeymoon murder. Half of them condemned Ruben as a liar. The other half floated theories of resort negligence, questioning whether someone else could have entered Villa 7 unnoticed. In Zanzibar, the pressure to find answers mounted quickly. Police filed formal charges against Ruben 3 days after Amal's death, yet the evidence left room for doubt. Room enough for one troubling question to linger in the minds of the investigators, the press, and the public alike. If Ruben didn't do it, then who did? By the time the trial began, the case had exploded across international headlines. British tabloids led with aggressive banners: Zanzibar honeymoon horror, groom or grim reaper, Villa 7, paradise lost. Photos of Amal and Ruben beamed from every front page. One captured them walking through the airport, hands clasped. Another, far more haunting, showed Ruben leaving a courthouse with his head bowed, surrounded by armed police. 7 months after Amal's death, the High Court of Zanzibar opened its doors to a packed gallery. Journalists jostled for position. TV crews whispered pre-roll scripts. Cameras weren't allowed inside, but sketches of the proceedings dominated nightly news segments across the UK and East Africa. The prosecution began with conviction. They claimed Ruben's outward charm masked deeper issues: insecurity, jealousy, and hidden resentment. Prosecutors introduced private messages Amal had sent to her best friend just weeks before their trip. Messages expressing that Ruben had grown distant and that she couldn't shake the feeling he was hiding something. The state alleged that an argument on the night of May 17th pushed him over the edge. That he struck Amal with the perfume bottle, strangled her using the scarf, and staged the rest to look like a tragic accident. They noted how calmly he sat when staff entered the villa, how little he had to say during initial questioning. His failure to call for help, they claimed, wasn't shock. It was guilt. But the defense pushed back, brick by brick. They argued that Ruben's mental state was the natural response of a man who had just lost the woman he loved. More importantly, they laid out a theory that pointed beyond the groom to the very resort that had welcomed them as guests. Key evidence helped fuel their claims: unexplained fingerprints on the sliding door, DNA under Amal's nails that didn't match Ruben or any staff. A forensic expert testified that the perfume bottle had no fingerprints at all, unusual given that Ruben admitted to handling it. They also brought attention to the resort's recent past. Just 2 months before the Vosses checked in, 2 employees were quietly dismissed over suspected theft. A travel blogger had posted a cryptic warning about night security being a joke weeks prior to the incident. None of this was disclosed to guests. And then there were the security cameras. 2 feeds, one aimed at the villa corridor and the other at the back trail, failed to record anything from 10:07 p.m. onward the night Amal died. A technician from the resort claimed it was a power fault. A second opinion, brought in by the defense, suggested tampering. Still, for all the inconsistencies and unanswered questions, the trial did not offer closure, only conflict. To some, Ruben remained a tragic figure, trapped in a storm he didn't create. To others, he was a man playing the long game, calculating, composed, perhaps capable of much more than he let on. As both sides rested their arguments, the courtroom fell into a hush that felt almost like a held breath. The jury deliberated for 3 days. When they returned, they gave their answer in a single word: not guilty. The room stood still. The foreperson of the jury rose slowly, face unreadable. Ruben sat without moving, his fingers laced tightly together, his eyes fixed on the floor. Reporters leaned forward. Amal's mother clutched her husband's arm. When the verdict was spoken, 2 words clear and final, there was a sharp intake of breath across the gallery. Not guilty. For a moment, there was silence. Not relief, not celebration, just silence. Reuben didn't react. No sigh, no smile, no tears. He simply nodded once as his solicitor placed a steady hand on his back. Behind him, someone exhaled loudly. No one could tell if it was disbelief or exhaustion. Amal's parents did not weep. They did not shout. They stood as the judge thanked the jury and closed the case, and then quietly left the room. Outside, when asked for a statement, Amal's father said only this: "We wanted truth. We leave without it." They didn't point fingers. They didn't offer Reuben comfort either. Their restraint was seen by many as dignified, by others as unresolved grief. Outside the courthouse, opinions split like fault lines. Some believed Reuben's acquittal was justice served. Others were outraged, convinced the wrong man walked free. Social media ignited with debate. Hashtags trended. Podcasts theorized. But no appeal was filed. No further suspects were named. With no new evidence and no alternate narrative from prosecutors, the case was quietly closed. What remained was a gap, a missing link, a truth that no one could reach. In the years that followed, Reuben disappeared from public view. He never gave interviews. He never returned to Zanzibar. The world moved on. Amal's family did not. They continue to ask the same question many of you might be thinking right now. Was justice truly served? What do you believe? Did the justice system protect the innocent or fail the victim? Drop your verdict in the comments. Would you have ruled differently? And if this story moved you, don't forget to subscribe, like, and share your thoughts. Reuben boarded a return flight to England 2 days after his acquittal. He didn't speak to the press. No statement. No apology. No claim of vindication. Within weeks, he vanished from public view. Records later showed he relocated to Edinburgh under a different surname. For a time, he worked in a small independent bookstore tucked between a tea house and a stationery shop. Locals described him as courteous, solitary, and always a few steps away from eye contact. Some suspected he used a pseudonym. Others were certain he was trying to disappear completely. He never responded to interview requests, letters, or inquiries. Not even once. Amal's family chose a different path. They didn't retreat. They built. In 2022, her younger brother, Adil, launched the Justice for Amal Foundation, a nonprofit committed to advocating for traveler safety, international justice reform, and transparency in overseas investigations. Their mission began with one goal: reopen the case. The foundation's independent research revealed disturbing patterns connected to Mangrove Reef Resort, now operating under a different name. Their investigation found quiet settlements involving theft, assault, and misconduct, all swept under layers of confidentiality agreements. One former employee spoke anonymously about a culture of silence, claiming certain staff were paid to look away. Another detail surfaced. 2 security cameras outside Villa 7 reportedly failed the night Amal died. Internal maintenance logs were later altered. No explanation was given. A third-party digital forensics team hired by the foundation reviewed audio records collected from nearby villas. Among the files, a muffled scream and a crash at approximately 12:03 a.m., matching the timeline of that night. The resort never disclosed this evidence to authorities during the initial investigation. To this day, no second suspect has been named. No further arrests have been made. And yet, there's a growing group of people who believe this story is far from over. Every year on May 17th, a quiet stretch of shoreline in Linton Bridge fills with soft lantern light. It's the same beach where Amal used to read aloud to Reuben, barefoot in the sand, her laughter catching the wind. Family and friends gather there annually, not to relive the nightmare, but to preserve her memory. They read her poems. They cast flowers into the sea. They don't speak of verdicts or theories, only of a life that was full of promise, tenderness, and words that now echo through silence. One poem is read every year, the last Amal shared in a group message the week before her trip. It ends like this: "I want the sea to know my name, to write it in salt and foam, and if I vanish from the map, let the tide bring me home." No one knows if she sensed anything before they boarded that plane. She left no journal, no warnings, no farewells. Only the unanswered question that continues to haunt everyone who followed this case. What really happened that night on the island? Was it a trespasser, slipping through the darkness unnoticed? Or was there something unspoken between two people who seemed inseparable? If you followed Amal and Reuben's story this far, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Do you believe it was an intruder? Or was the truth hiding within their love story? Drop your theory in the comments. Like, subscribe, and stay tuned. We have more mysteries ahead.